Fáilte to you wherever you are in the world, be that in Ireland, Ethiopia, South Sudan, or elsewhere. You're listening to Diplomatic Airwaves, the podcast series of the Embassy of Ireland in Addis Ababa. My name is Stephen T. Frayne, and today it's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you one of our first ever guests on the podcast, that is Sister Orla Tracy. For those of you who do not know her already, Sister Orla, who originally hails from the Emerald Isle herself, is the principal and director of the Loreto Rumbek Mission in South Sudan. In that mission, Sister Orla has pioneered the establishment of a primary school and secondary school, as well as a primary healthcare centre in Rumbek, and more to come in a wheel. Across 20 years of service in South Sudan, Sister Orla has continuously championed the education of young girls in the region, and in doing so has become closely associated with Ireland's long-standing commitment to solidarity and partnerships in South Sudan. For her work, Sister Orla has been awarded the Presidential Distinguished Service Award, the Hugh O'Flaherty International Humanitarian Award, the International Women of Courage Award, and more recently has been conferred an honorary fellowship and doctorate respectively from the Royal College of Surgeons and St. Patrick's Pontifical University in recognition of her service to social justice and women's rights in South Sudan. Sister Orla, that's a very impressive CV. How do you manage to do it all?
That sounds impressive to me too, by the way, when you put it all together. It's great. We have a great team here. So it's easy to do good things when you have a good team with you. But it's lovely to be with you. I feel very honored to be one of your first guests as well. Thank you, Stephen, for the invitation. And it's hard to believe it's 20 years. It'll be 20 years in the next, I think, 3 weeks. When I came, I said I'd come for 5 years, and I'm still here, and I'm very happy here in South Sudan. So let's see. Let's see what the next 20 years will bring. But I suppose every year has been different. Every year has brought different challenges. And we always have to kind of say, well, what's our mandate? And our mandate has always been about young people and young women and empowering young women. They would say in Africa that a bird doesn't fly in one wing. And often in our culture, it is the boys that are favored and pushed to academia, whereas we would say, well, you can't build a community without the girls. And then they would also say that, if you educate a boy, if you educate a girl, you'll educate a village. If you educate a boy, you'll educate him. So there's a lot of pluses within the cultural context around the education of girls and the acknowledgement that when you educate a girl, she will do a lot in her community. It's been a real privilege to be here. It's been a privilege to serve here and to mission here. And God willing, I'll continue for many more years as well.
As you said, Sister Orla, you've been there for almost 20 years now. So you're a long way from home back in Ireland. How has your life led you to bring you to Rumbek in South Sudan?
Yeah, it's true. Imagine. I have to tell you this, that I never ever wanted to be a missionary. I was very clear about that when I joined Loreto. As a family, we traveled a lot. My father worked in the county council, so we moved. I went to school I was actually born in Carlow. We lived in Dundalk for a while. I started my primary school in Ennis, or in Tralee. I spent 7 years in primary school in Ennis. And then we moved to Wicklow, where I went to secondary school. So moving was never a problem for me, and living in different places and adapting and adjusting was never a problem for me. But I never envisaged myself leaving Ireland. I went to Mater Dei in Dublin and I studied to be a teacher. And at that stage, I was already thinking about religious life, but I wasn't really sure. I mean, I wanted to enjoy life. I wanted to be a mother, but this draw to religious life was very strong for me. So I started teaching in Cork with the Presentation Brothers, and then I ended up in Mayo teaching as well, and in Donegal. So I went all around the country. But when I joined Loreto, I was very clear. In Loreto, you don't have to be a missionary. Not all congregations would have missionaries. So I was very happy to stay in Ireland and to work with young people in Ireland. But I had been to India twice. And each time I went to India, it had quite a profound effect on me. The first time I went to India, I finally decided I would be a sister after avoiding it for many years. And the second time I went to India, I decided I could be a missionary. And the time that I decided I could be a missionary was the same time when our sisters in Ireland were thinking about starting a new mission. And that new mission led us to southern Sudan. By then, it was part of Sudan. It had just finished over 20 years of civil war. And there was a bishop here, an Italian bishop here, who was looking for a religious group of sisters to begin a girls' boarding secondary school. And when I sat down and looked at the map, I mean, I love travel. So when I sat down and looked at the map, I saw all these countries bordering Sudan. And I thought, you know what, this would be great. It'd be a great way to see Africa. You know, there was Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan. Well, Sudan North was there, Kenya, Uganda, the Congo, Libya. Now, some of them you'd be thinking to yourself, is she mad? But I was thinking, this is great. I could travel to all these places and have lots of experiences. So I volunteered. Um, Unsure whether I'd be picked, but very clear that I was happy to go. And thankfully, my family was very happy. I think they knew I was a bit mad anyway, in terms of, journeying and doing different things. Um, and I applied, and thankfully, I was one of the team selected to come and start the new mission in February 2006. Um, yeah, I mean, it was a clear mandate, but of course, nothing was ready. Nothing was what we thought it was going to be. And what turned out to be a boarding school was actually just a piece of land. There was nothing there. And it actually took us 2 years to build enough so that we could actually start. So, yeah, I never imagined I would be here. And I definitely never imagined that I'd be here for 20 years. But we say God's ways are not our ways. So, yeah, it's been beautiful.
We never know what life has in store for us.
Absolutely not. Just said, by the way, I'm just drinking my Barry's tea here. This is the first commercial break. Can we do commercial breaks too? I'm a
We'll
great
have
fan
to,
of Barry's tea, by the way, even in South Sudan, because
for
it's the
the
strongest cup you can get.
for the interest of balance, we also have lions as well, but
Oh, all right,
that'll be for
sorry, Lions. Well,
episode
I'm sure
two.
Lions, sorry. I can have prefer. You can do Lions and I'll do Barry, so we just meet
We'll
halfway.
diplomatically balance it out. But for our viewers back home, be they drinking Barry's or Lions or whatever it'll be, maybe can you tell us a bit more about the life for someone growing up in South Sudan, particularly for the life of a typical girl in South Sudan, and what do you see the most important thing in your role to help affect their lives?
When we came to Rumbek in 2006, it was just recovering from a civil war, and there were not many structures available. There was one secondary school in the town, and it was 98% male and 2% female. And even those females, the day when we went to visit, we couldn't even find the females in the school. There was absolutely no value placed on girl child education because we live in a pastoralist community. We live among the Dinka, and a girl is married for her cow value. So from the age of 15, 16, 17, her extended family, who are also beneficiaries of her wedding, they are already looking for her to get married so that they can get cows from her. So the suggestion that a girl could be educated was very, very far from the mindset of many, and continues to be, by the way, yeah, amongst many. When we came, we were very clear our mandate was start a girls' boarding secondary school. And people thought we were mad. And actually, they were right. We were absolutely mad. It was extremely radical what we wanted to do. And I think it was only as time went on that we realized how really mad we were because we found the girls weren't even going to primary school. There were very few girls going to primary school. And here we were setting up to say we're going to start a girls' boarding secondary school to welcome girls from different areas. The community would say to us, the girls won't come. And then we would say to them, well, maybe they'll come. Or I think what happened over the years was the girls started coming. And then the community elders would say to us, well, they might come, but they won't stay. They won't finish secondary school. And slowly we proved that wrong. So the next thing was to start sending them to university. The elders would say they will never finish. And slowly they started finishing going to university. And then when they finished university, they would say things like, well, they're never going to get a job. And all of a sudden, you have these young women who have finished secondary school, finished university, getting very good jobs in their community and becoming the sole provider for 10 or 15 in their own family. So it became a kind of a very slow ripple effect, if I can say, very slow effect that it took a long time for people to see that this is something that doesn't undermine their culture but supplements the culture. And that was very important for us, so that we weren't seen to be undermining their values and their culture, but that we were trying to root ourselves within the culture to develop a system that would also allow women to have an equal opportunity and a chance to speak. So it took a long time. It took probably about 10 years to really settle into the system. And now we can get over 400 girls for 100 places every year. They
Incredible.
are, yeah, many, many, many people are looking to come. Now, on the flip side of all of that, the attraction with boarding school is that a girl is not going to be out. And as the community would say, she's not going to get pregnant when she's out because she's safe and secure in a boarding school. And I remember one parent coming to me a few years ago and saying to me, he said, I really like your school. He said, I want my daughter to come to your school because you have a big wall. And I remember saying to the parent, I said, the prison has a big wall as well. I hope it's more than the security that is bringing your daughter to our school.
Indeed.
So there is still a kind of a mixed bag as to why people would be attracted to sending their girls to us. But the girls on a whole are just absolutely fantastic. And each one of them has had to struggle to be here. Each one of them has had to fight for her right to be here. And each one of them would get a lot of insults. They would get a lot of complaints. They would get a lot of bullying when they go home, particularly from women, because they are not following the traditional path of marrying at a young age. And of course, the younger you get married, traditionally, the higher the cow dowry was. So at 16, 17, 18, you might be getting 150 cows, but marrying a 24, 25, 26, you're an old woman. You're not going to produce as many children, and this is the goal of the community. They need a lot of children. But now what we are seeing is that our graduates who are working with us earning money, they're supporting their families. The families are now respecting them as decision makers, as the elders in the community, and now inviting them into community conflicts to also have an opinion and to have a say in it. So it's been a huge revolution and a huge shift in mindset around what young women can do and what they can bring to their community.
And something I think I really like about your story in Rumbek Sister Orla is the way it's come full cycle in the last few years. Some of the children who you taught through primary and secondary school have gone on to university, and they're working with you now as teachers, teaching the next generation. As someone who's been a mentor for them in many ways, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a privilege. It really is. As teachers, we very often see the long, the end of the game. We don't get to see where students end up or the change that they can make. But here we get to see it every day, and it's just beautiful. I
Yeah.
think we have about 15 staff back. They're our own graduates. They went through secondary school, they came back for internship. They went to Kenya for university and they got a good quality education. And now they're back working with us in the clinic as nurses, in school as teachers, in administration, in agriculture, in logistics, in finance, in all the departments that we have.
Wow.
And it's really just a joy to watch them and to hear them fight for other young women. Because
Yeah.
within the school, we will still have girls coming from communities where sometimes families will come to the gate with sticks and guns looking for the girls because they want them married. But it's often the graduates now that become the front face. They're able to go out and they're able to negotiate on behalf of these younger girls, and they're able to be ambassadors for the younger women in their community. And it's just fabulous. They are passionate, absolutely passionate about women in the community, about education, about the dignity of women and children. And it's an extraordinary experience to be part of.
And for yourself as well, having experienced South Sudan now for 2 decades, you've seen the country through its most critical moments in history, its birth, its independence, the conflicts it's gone through, and the hope on people's faces for a new future. Maybe can you tell us a bit about the experiences on that you've seen and how that's impacted you yourself as a person and the work you do there?
I think working in South Sudan can often be a bit of a roller coaster. And we were just talking, we have a new volunteer that has arrived today from Ireland. We're just telling her that there's a vocabulary that we use here that we wouldn't use in Ireland. Every day we're talking about security or insecurity. Every day we're talking about revenge attacks or peace. Um, that is still very much part of our reality, and monitoring road safety, monitoring security. what's the local information, what's being said. So that's a big part of our life too, and just reminding ourselves that, we live in peace, but there's always tension. And unfortunately, at the moment, there's a bit more tension than we would like. We also traditionally we like to fight in the dry season, and this is our dry season. So, you can see a bit more and hear a bit more tension around of fights or whatever. Um, but I really, to come into a culture that was on its knees at the end of the Civil War and to live through these 20 years has been a real privilege. I remember we were only here about 2 years, and I remember the president coming to visit. And he's saying one day, he said, we are not rebuilding South Sudan, we are building South Sudan. South Sudan was never built. Um, when they attack, when the war went on in South Sudan, it wasn't like we had big buildings where you would bomb or anything like that. We're still living in huts in many areas. We're still living very simply and close to the ground and close to nature. So it's about witnessing a nation from its knees trying to stand. We had independence in 2011, and that was a most extraordinary experience. And I suppose as an Irish person, independence and that sense of liberation is it's in our psyche, it's in our DNA. I mean, no matter what we do, we want that
Yeah.
sense of national pride. And so to live here among a community while they're deliberating, because we were here for the first 5 years during the Comprehensive Peace Agreement when Sudan and South Sudan were negotiating. Would South Sudan be permitted to have an election to decide on its independence? And Sudan gave us that opportunity in 2011. And it was just incredible. And most of our people are not literate, so they were using their thumbprints to vote. Everybody voted. And I remember going out that morning and just moving from voting station to voting station. It was just an extraordinary, a tree. I mean, it was just voting under the tree, but it was most extraordinary with national pride. And people have a very strong sense of identity, a very strong sense of culture. Um, but we are still on our knees because where Ireland got independence at a time when we were educated, South Sudan got independence when we were not educated, and we are still not literate enough. And unfortunately, we have huge corruption. Unfortunately, we don't have a good educational system yet. So there's still a long way to go to bring the country up to where it could be, because the people are an extraordinary people, and we have 64 cultures, 64 languages, so diversity is huge with us. Um, but yeah, it has been a very special time to live through, but it's like living with a teenager. You know, you don't know what you're going to get when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's like every day you're just trying to check the tone and check the emotions and check how everything is. And I think there's still a tension in the air. But there's resilience. I mean, the people here are the most extraordinary, resilient people. And I think we've all had to learn that it doesn't matter what happened yesterday is yesterday. What happens is today, and we just deal with today.
And how do you find your resilience yourself as someone who has moved into the country and started from fresh there?
I think in the early years I struggled a lot more than I do now.
Okay.
Um, I had never been in a boarding school in my life, and after 2 years and a week, I was with other sisters, and after 2 weeks and a week, I found myself in charge of the boarding school. Which the boarding school was only a week old, and I found myself left in charge of it. I hadn't a clue what I was doing, but that was the greatest blessing because when you don't know what to do, you ask for help. And in this culture, it's a very collectivist community. So they want to be part of it. They want to help. They want to support. And I think that was the greatest gift that happened to me was that I needed help. Now it was coming out of a place of desperation. I mean, I won't martyr myself and say that I was great, that I went out and asked for help. I didn't. I hadn't a clue. I had no option but to say, look, help, let's do this together.
Yeah.
And our first staff came in from Kenya. They had only been here a few days. And we really just had to row together with the local community, the cooks, the watchmen. They had never been into a school in their lives, but they were the people that helped us to kind of slowly form the school and slowly put a culture on the school. And we kept borrowing from the culture. I mean, one beautiful thing we have here is families in the school. So what happens is the new student comes, she doesn't have any female in her family who's been educated. So she doesn't know how to behave in school. But what we did was she was then mentored by a first year student. Let's say she was coming in first year, maybe she'd be mentored by a second year student. And the second year student would mentor her into boarding school life, would mentor her into school life, how to be in school, what she needed for school, how to behave in school. But the second year had a mother in third year. So the mother in third year then became the grandmother to the new student. And the one in third year had a mother in fourth year who became the great grandmother. So they became these, and still they have their family meetings. And when the new student comes, it usually takes a month or two for the new student to start settling into a rhythm of life. We don't get involved. The students sort themselves out. The students support one another. The students mentor one another. We have a prefect system, but the prefect system here is very different to the Irish prefect system because it's almost like a mini management group. They sort out their student affairs. What they can't deal with is reported to the staff. And, in every level, they want leadership. In every level, they want responsibility. In every level, they want to care for one another. And that has been a great learning for me because I think maybe if I had known more, I might have imported more of a European mindset onto the project here. But because I hadn't a clue, it was a case of, well, how do we do this together within this cultural context that is relevant to them? And it has worked very, very well for us.
And I think it's great after all these years and all the work you've done that you've received so much recognition as we've touched upon earlier. I know as well you some years ago were the one of the winners of the Presidential Distinguished Service Award and was awarded by the former President Michael D. Higgins. Maybe can you talk us through that moment when you learned you were being given the award, how it made you feel and what it meant for recognition of the work in Rumbek?
I When you get recognized by your home culture and your home country,
Yeah.
it does something to you. Because I have lived out of Ireland. Okay, I'm in and out, that's true, but I have lived here for 20 years. But, to get that acknowledgement from your own country, from your own leadership, from your own people, it's something very special and it's something very beautiful. The other side of it is it gives us a chance to advertise. And I think sometimes we feel that in South Sudan, the world doesn't know what's happening. Or the world only knows about a war and conflict and hunger in South Sudan, but they don't know about the resilience of the young women. So I always think that, whenever there's a platform to advertise the good, or whenever there's a platform to acknowledge the resilience and the giftedness of our young women, it's also very special and very beautiful that I can do that and that I can represent them in a situation like that. And it encourages them. I mean, I go home and I come back and I say to them, this is what we've got now. And it's an us, we have won this award, and everybody gets very excited and everybody feels very proud that we are known, that we are recognized outside. And I think that's very, very important for the girls that they recognize that they're not alone, that there are many people who are watching and following and supporting. And I think that also gives them a confidence and it gives them a lift to know that they are part of something bigger, that their struggle is not in vain, but it's also a witness and an example to many, many others. So really, it's yeah, very beautiful. And when I got that award, it was during COVID, so it was
Yes.
winter time, cold time. And I remember the the night when I came to Dublin, it was so cold, so cold. I was complaining. I think Simon Coveney was there that night, and I said, "You know what? The next time you're giving out awards, I said, would you do it during the summer?" Those of us coming from the heat of Africa, I said, could cope. But it was beautiful, and I was awarded the same night as two other missionaries. Brother Callum from Kenya, who I think was over 40 years, is a brother in Kenya and a very famous brother for athletes. And there was another sister that was awarded from Asia, and I think she was about 70 years a missionary. And I was only about 15 years a missionary, I think, at the time. And I was thinking, was like, bloody hell. I mean, I'm only a baby in the world of
You've a
service.
while to go,
I'm
yes.
only a baby, but these people have really dedicated their lives to the greater picture and the greater goal. And it's just extraordinary to stand with them and to be honored as well. Really incredible.
Absolutely, and well deserved, I think, as well. You mentioned about support. I wonder, can you tell us a bit about what support from the international community, from Irish Aid and others, means to your work and how that can make your ambitions and goals in Rumbek come true?
Um, we live in a culture that doesn't yet value girl child education. And our fathers are polygamous and they might have a few cows, but they won't sell their cows to educate their children. So for us, we have to do a substantial amount of fundraising for this mission to exist. At the moment, it's probably about 85% of the costs we have to carry from donor. We're trying to get that down, but it's a slow struggle, but we're working towards it. So we would have to partner, and we do partner with many institutions in Ireland, with schools, our Loreto family, with many donors around Ireland, around Europe, and in particular with Irish Aid under the umbrella of Mission Cara. Mission Cara has been a very, very big supporter for us for over the last 20 years, and have supplemented many of the projects that we've been involved in. So I'm always grateful. I often say when I go to Ireland and people are complaining about tax, I just say, please don't complain because we get it from you. And we can't do what we do without the support of the Irish people. Um, there are others who support as well and different foundations, but it's a blessing. It's like a project where so many hands are part of, and a real example of beautiful solidarity across the world with the most vulnerable. It's really a beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a creative work, a tapestry of all parts fitting in together. And if you pull one part and one thread, it'll all start to unravel. So a big part of our work is working with partners to help us maintain the work.
And not just maintaining, but moving forward as well. I want to ask you a little bit about what your plans for the future are with Loreto Rumbek.
Oh, I came home to Dublin, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And I told my boss in Dublin, Sister Barbara, I said, I think it's time now. I said, I think, some of us are able to build and some of us are able to maintain. And I said, I'm a builder. And I said, I think we've done what we need to do. And I think it's time now to come back. So she said, it's okay. She's a very big, generous woman. She said, it's okay, but maybe you just keep an eye on things while we do a transition. I said, no problem. And then I went back to South Sudan, and five of our graduates came to meet us from the town of Awil. Now, Awil is about a 10-hour drive from Rumbek. So these young women had been students in Rumbek, boarders in Rumbek, and after finishing school, they had moved back to their home area of Awil. And they got married, they had their families, they're working mothers. And now, as working mothers, they are also looking around a wheel and they're saying, well, where are their children going to be educated? So they came back to us and they asked, would the Loreto sisters ever think of expanding? I thought to myself, my bags were half packed at this stage. And I thought, oh, yeah, absolutely. We would love to expand. Of course, we'd love to expand. And when people come to you like that, they just throw something out to you politely and you don't really expect much. So myself and a few of the sisters listened to them. We said, oh, yeah, we'd love that. We'd really love that. You go off now and you go and put your ideas together and come back to us and we'll see what to do. Thought nothing of it. Because, I mean, people would often say this kind of thing, but you wouldn't think much of it. Well, I tell you, there was one of them in that group that was very forthright and very clear and had a great vision. And she came back 3 months later and she said, we have the land. I said, what do you mean we have the land? And she said, we've been talking to the government it's the state of Northern Barkazal. We've been talking to the government. And she said, we've identified land where you could build a school. And I said, are you serious? And she said, yes. She said, but we talked to you a few months ago and we are very serious. And I said, yeah, okay. Now I said, on our side, I said, that takes a bit of time. We have to discern it. We have to pray about it. We have to reflect on it. We have to talk to our Irish boss. Our Irish boss has to talk to other bosses. I said, this is not just something simple. We have to go and talk to the local bishop. And I said, you just give us time. So she said, okay. I don't know, God's grace, I don't know. But within 6 months, we had everybody's yes. And normally it would take us 2 to 3 years to move on decisions like this. Within 6 months, everybody was on board and everybody was saying yes. I mean, it was just, I think when our provincial came from Ireland to visit, she just looked at me at one stage and she said, how do you say no to this? Because she went to a wheel, she met the graduates and she said, they are just so passionate. She said, how? She said, it's just alive. It's just alive. So I said, yeah. And I think her concern was, am I still packing my bags? I said, no, 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 I'm not packing my bags. I said, if we're going to build again, I said, I'm happy to stay. So she said, great. So last year we blessed a piece of land, a very beautiful piece of land outside of a wheel, about 15 kilometers in the town center. And in November this year, we blessed the convent. We are now living in a wheel, and we are just about to start the construction of the boarding school and the classrooms. So next week, I'm going up to a wheel to do the first intake of the first class of students.
Wow.
But what we've decided to do is we will take that first class of students to Rumbek for the first year, and they will study in Rumbek. So it'll give them a chance to adapt into boarding school life, to have the older students mentor them, to have their school mothers and grandmothers, whatever. And then, God willing, next year we'll be able to start. This group will go back and we will welcome a new group and we will start it from there. But yeah, it's beautiful. And the welcome we have got from a wheel is just extraordinary, really, really extraordinary. And we're discovering graduates and connections all over. Even as we drive to a wheel, there are so many graduates on the road, and everybody is saying, why not here? Why not there? Why not whatever? So I just say, look, at in God's own time, let's just see, let us see. But yeah, we're very happy. But it is a huge building project and a huge financial challenge for us as well. But we just trust. I mean, we never thought this was going to happen. So we just trust that if this is meant to be, that the support will also come with it. And if you've any rich donors out there, hi, we're looking for money. Is that all right? Can I say that?
Well, I was going to round up our conversation. Is there any message, speaking of platforms again, that you would have for people listening? How can they support your project in Rumbek and in the Wheel?
I think the most obvious thing, absolutely, is we need money. That's the most obvious thing. We have a website, www.lorettoschools.ie, and you can donate there, or you can send us through the bank. We have our house in Dublin, but you get all the details on the website. It is a precarious country. And at the moment, there is a lot of tension around. So I often say to people, if you're a believer and someone who prays, please pray for the country. And I think the other thing is international communities. You know, sometimes people know people and can have quiet words in the words of other ears. I think we do need to work more for peace. I've just come back from a peace pilgrimage with 190 young people, and we walked for 9 days in Warrap, and Warrap is a neighboring state to us. Mm-hmm. And Warrap has been under a state of emergency for the last 6 months, and there is a lot of insecurity. And our young people, they talk. You know, every village they went into, every town they went into, they talked. And you never know who's listening. So I suppose what I'm saying is that if you have influence, to share the story of South Sudan. And I think just to recognize that you have to work to keep peace. And I know that in our world today, there are lots of pockets of insecurity and thoughts on fear and threats. But I think it's just maybe to remind people of the preciousness of peace, that we don't take it for granted, and that we can continue to build each other up with peaceful words, because I think that influences other cultures and other communities as well, when we can use words of peace. So any of those things, but definitely money, if you have any money.
And I suppose you would accept a box of Barry's if they sent them to you as well.
Oh my goodness, I am #1 supporter of Barry's. Yeah. And you know, the funny thing is that many of the African teas are connected with Barry's as well, but you can't beat Barry's, really. You can't beat it. I've tried it, but I can't beat it.
I don't know what kind of advertising deal you've got going on behind the scenes there.
Barry's, if you're listening, I'm here in South Sudan. Just telling you. Yeah. Thanks for that possibility to do another ad. Thank you, Stephen.
And let me just say as well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today, to share your story and all the incredible work you're doing. You've really spoke with great honesty and candor here, and we really appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. So once again, thank you so much, Sister Orla.
Thank you, Stephen, and good to see you. And don't forget to come back to South Sudan as well.
I'll be back very soon. I look forward to it.
Good. Thanks a million. Good to talk to you. God bless. See you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Diplomatic Airwaves, the podcast series of the Embassy of Ireland in Addis Ababa. Episodes are released every Friday. You can listen on ireland.ie or wherever you get your podcasts.